living la vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs, time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage, we're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal, yeah, you're getting closer. Motivated and focused, don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
So guys, that right there is Jaci Woods. She is over on Instagram. Go check her out, carnivore_RD, and that is a dietitian. So she is a real food carnivore dietitian, the few, the proud, right, Jaci?
Exactly.
And you recently did something that I thought was very interesting, which is why you're here today. You started engaging more in regenerative farming. And so the whole idea of eating local, eating sustainable, they're kind of buzzwords now. I want to get to the root of what that actually is. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got interested in being a dietitian first.
Sure. So I only became a dietitian last year. Actually, February 2020 was when I took my exam and finished my internship. So about years ago when I was younger and just kind of getting done with high school, not sure about college if I wanted to go or not. I had gone through, my grandparents had my grandpa had pancreatic cancer, and he passed away from that. And I had a lot of questions because he was very healthy. He took his vitamins, ate what I thought was a healthy diet. I did not understand why he got sick. And then my grandmother, she had type 2 diabetes, and then she also developed Alzheimer's. And also, passed away during that time as well. And both those diseases, again, I didn't understand. And as I started looking into them, I started learning that there was a big connection to their diet. Yeah, and it was so shocking. And, I also, on my own end, I was not very healthy. I worked at a Dairy Queen for 5 years and basically lived off of that.
Hey, the dipping the cone into the freeze-dried chocolate.
Oh gosh, it's so gross how it comes.
Sit there and dip it all day. It probably does get gross after a while in that chocolate stuff. So
yeah, that stuff comes in this giant chunky package, and it's soybean oil, and I mean it's the worst. Yeah, all of it is ultra processed foods, and so my health was suffering as well. And I first learned about the word organic, and I became obsessed with that. I bought everything organic. I stopped eating fast food altogether, and tried to encourage others. And then my health, as that improved, I started going to college, didn't know what I wanted to be. And somehow some counselor kind of connected. She's like, well, you really like food. There's this thing called a dietitian. I'm like, what? You can help people, eat better and help them heal. And that started that journey. So once I finished at the community college, I transferred to for dietetics. There's only certain universities that are accredited.
Right. So
you can't just go anywhere. I almost actually got sucked into a university that didn't actually have a program, but they said I could be a nutritionist, which is, doesn't have any licensure or anything behind it. But thankfully I didn't go that route. I met some girls who came to my school that did go that route. So I started that journey, went to school in St. Louis, did my internship there, and just, kept learning more and more about food and nutrition. But during my undergrad studies, they encouraged us to do a lot of volunteering. And I volunteered for a farm fundraiser one night in October of 2016. And I met all these farmers there, and they were telling me about this program in St. Louis at a farm in Ferguson, Missouri, that you could do a 7-month, internship kind of there, where you're there 8 hours a week working in the field, and then you have an hour and a half class every Tuesday night, and it's all on organic farming, permaculture, regenerative, everything. And so of course I, despite being in school, signed up for that and, completed that program. And, almost part of me almost left school just to become a farmer, honestly, because it was so much fun. But, I stuck through and was able to bring both of them together now.
That's amazing. But let me see how rare you are. Because here, and again, those of you that came in late, this is Jaci Woods. Carnivore RD is your username. So people think dietitian, oh, they're going to push a lot of plant foods. And I know you got a lot of that in your education. You got a lot of kind of the traditional, probably, information about dietary fats, especially saturated fats, animal foods not being healthy. And yet, while you're going through the schooling, juxtaposed to that, you're looking at this real life example of where food is coming from and seeing a regenerative farmer and going, whoa, what a process. How did you reconcile those two seemingly opposing viewpoints in your mind?
Well, personally, you mentioned how the plant-based push is very strong in dietetics, and I fell for that my junior year, actually, after being on that farm. Unfortunately, it was more of a vegetable farm, so there were a lot of vegan vegetarians that I met, and they looked so beautiful. They were so, perfect. Oh, I wanted to, kind of emulate them, and I did. And since I worked at the farm, we got a share of organic food, and this farm was organic before organic existed. So yet it's in the city. It's really funny, this little farm. But so I had really good access to great food. And I think the vegan diet worked for me for maybe 3 months. But then my own health suffered. I stopped cycling, my hair, I look back at pictures, my arms were my muscles were gone.
Yeah.
And so I personally kind of experienced that myself and came to a point where I was like, okay, I think I need to add back in meat, and I did. And that really helped. And I then turned to more of a ketogenic diet. And it was kind of funny, as I sat there healing with a keto diet, I'm getting told the opposite from my teacher, that keto's bad and fat's bad. And it was very, it was hard to just sit there and be like, well, is it? Like, it's helping me, and I thankfully had a teacher that was like, hey, there are other ways. It's not, just plant-based.
Well, and that's the frustrating thing, because people look at dietitians, as they should, as kind of the doctors when it comes to food. And so you are supposed to know all the ins and outs of food and how it works in the body and blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, it's just like medical professionals. They're only taught kind of physiology and pharmacology, and here's a symptom and here's a drug for said symptom. You're only taught one kind of monolithic way of teaching nutrition, unless you learn on your own like you have. It's doing a great disservice. So, like, I know that frustrates you, but for you finding out this for yourself, you'd be pushing the same mantra that the vast majority of dietitians are doing today yourself on other clients. Like, that's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, it really is. However, at the job I have now, I have been fortunate to partner with Missouri State University, and I get interns from them. And they all get kind of a shock. Oh, yeah. First, I remember my first one, I told her we were going to work with a client or a patient who was diabetic, and they were going to, we were going to try the ketogenic diet. And she was like, not ketosis, right? I'm like, yes, ketosis is what we're going for.
Yes.
And and I have, a lot of books that I'm sure many of that you've read, and some of your books even, and I have all the interns, I have little sections I have them read paragraphs or chapters from, and they're always just like, I never learned this in school.
Well, I think a lot of the dogmaticness of the teaching is based on older information. Like, there's so much new science, and obviously I highlight a lot of it in my own work, and I've written a lot of it in my own books. There's so much science now. How can you even ignore, if we're supposed to be about evidence-based, which even the Dietetics Association, along with the medical people, all of them always are looking for, show me the evidence, show me the studies. Well, there is science out there. Why do you think they continue to ignore it? Is it because they've dug in their heels so hard on one way that they feel like it'll be egg on their face? They don't like eggs either. It'll be egg whites on their face if they shift.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is kind of pride. They don't want to say that they were telling you the wrong way to treat your diabetes, because then there's a little blame almost on them, because that's why they didn't get better. So yeah, I think a big part of it's pride. And then, of course, big bad money, kind of follow the money. Those big corporations are heavily influencing the dietetics academy.
Yes. The shocker for me, Jaci, was when I found out one of the major sponsors of the American Dietetics Association is Coca-Cola. And they're going to these conferences, and there's Coca-Cola this, Coca-Cola that, everywhere, because they put in a lot of money. And I don't think the average everyday person even realizes the corporate interests that have tentacles all throughout the dietitians that they go see.
Exactly. It really, I mean, I have insulin companies that call me and want to bring me education, you know, and some of it's okay. I have seen some improvements, like I'll see vegetable oil not as heavily pushed, you know, eggs, they're kind of lightening, they somewhat. Now it's really more the red meat. I see they'll take, like, that wasn't even on their protein list. It just had chicken, turkey, and like eggs and tofu, you know, no pork or beef. So that's a little concerning, but yeah, definitely the industry influence is huge. I went to the Academy's annual conference a few years ago. I volunteered at it, actually, and it was Monsanto, McDonald's, I mean, Ocean Spray was there. I was like, what is going on? You know, like, that's not healthy. So like, money talks.
Perfect world, there would be an independent dietetics association teaching what the science says. They would be funded just like the NIH funds a lot of research independently. There needs to be something that would have no strings attached, because like once you add the strings, then there's an obligation to the people giving the strings. And so do you think that'll ever happen? Is it possible? Or even as a subset or a separate organization from the American Dietetics Association, you and your other fellow dietitians kind of going, whoa, we want to have a little more of an organization of like-minded folk where we set up our own infrastructure. Do you think that could ever happen?
I think so. I think more dietitians are waking up and either personally experiencing it or just reading the research and learning that there is another side to it. So I think, you know, a lot of us will have to unite and probably start something, you know, almost on our own. I think that would really be the best way to do it, because that other organization is pretty far gone and pretty far in. I don't know if they could really ever come out from that.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and at Real Good Foods on social media.
Well, and they've gotten arrogant with the power. And we've seen it in the American Heart Association, same thing. American Diabetes Association, I will give them credit. 2018, they got a new president who actually controlled her diabetes with low-carb diets. And so I was like, all right, there's going to be changes now. And there have been incremental, not earth-shattering, but incremental, where at least there's an option there now. For low-carb diets for people to control their diabetes, which is kind of a well-duh. It's a disease of carbohydrate intolerance. Why would we not have people cut their carbs?
I know. We get a lot of dietitians get emails from like Today's Dietitian or certain little magazines, and I'll send some to my friends, and it'll highlight a low-carb diet may help diabetes. It's kind of like, really? No way.
Who knew?
Exactly. But yeah, I think it'll be a slow thing. And, you know, at least I feel good that I've been helping other students. All of them have told me that they at least feel better, but more confident about suggesting a keto or a low carb diet to someone with diabetes. I'm like, okay, good. That's a start.
So I went to the farmer's market on Saturday. It's open from like 8 to noon here locally in my hometown of Spartanburg, South Carolina. And there's this one lady, real nice lady, that has all this produce, and it's beautiful. I mean, she does a good job of displaying it, and it's well done. And lately she's added in, for about the past month, another farm does grass-fed beef and lamb and different things. And I'm like, okay, wow, I can buy from her now, because I'm mostly carnivore, and I'm about to start this experiment doing all carnivore for 100 days. And so I've been stocking up from her lately. And so Saturday when I went, I said, how much ground beef do you have? I'll buy it all. And she
Yes.
had 1 pound this week. And so she sold it to me, and she's like, what are you doing with all this meat? I said, oh, and I tell her about my experiment. And you should have seen the look on her face of like, uh, there's no vegetables in there. Okay, and she said, don't you need those? And I gave her a little bit of education about and the micronutrients and blah blah blah. And she's like, she was just dumbfounded. It was like I had two heads on my body, and she just didn't know what to do with that. And I said, well, actually, I'm trying to avoid all the anti-nutrients and all of these foods that you sell over here. And she didn't have any idea what I was talking about.
No, in school, I mean, the only one I may have heard about in school was soy. And that was if it wasn't like fermented enough, you know, they kind of just, it was like a real quick little thing. But other than that, it was plants, and meat's killing you, you know, and it was like I said, I fell for it. A lot of us kind of fell for it. But then in reality, I don't think a lot of us even followed it. I mean, a lot of my classmates were bodybuilders, you know, they had to eat a lot of protein, you know, so they just kind of went along with it.
Well, they're pushing this obnoxious plant-based burger movement, the whole Beyond Meat and Impossible burgers. I'm like, yeah, it's beyond something, and it's definitely impossible because it ain't going in this mouth.
No, thank you.
I actually did try a couple of years ago on camera, 2.5 years ago, the Beyond Meat burger, because I said, okay, I want to take one for the team. I want to see what all the hullabaloo is about. I didn't go to Burger King and get the Impossible Whopper. I actually wanted to cook this myself. And I'm glad I did, because taking it out, it was the most putrid smelling. Oh my God. I was just like, ugh. And you look at the ingredients, it's like 29 ingredients, and they had to put beet juice in there to mimic the blood look, and coconut oil to kind of give it the juiciness. And it actually did taste decent for what it was. It was a lot better than I expected, the smoke flavor they put in there. But I'm like, people think that is healthy, 29 ingredients, and then a beef burger has beef. That's it. And it's like, how can we say something with poly ingredients is better than something with one ingredient? Like we've been talking in recent years, culturally, the less ingredients in something, the better. I remember, what was it, Michael Pollan? Oh, let's keep it 5 ingredients or less. Well, beef is 1 ingredient. That fits the model, Michael Pollan, and yet he says eat food, mostly plants. And I'm going, no, eat meat as much as you want until you're satiated, and then do it again when you're hungry. Like that's not hard.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's, you know, I get where they're coming from, where it seems like, oh, if I eat only plants, like, yeah, they just grow in the garden. However, most of us aren't, you know, getting them that way. They're still coming from California or Mexico or, you know, abroad. And yeah, that's plant-based, but is that good for the environment? I would argue no. All that travel time and the inputs that have to go into that, that's not good for you. But beef, you can get a lot of animal products pretty local. You know, that's something I've learned around here. I've gone on Craigslist or Facebook Market, and you can find people selling, you know, pounds or half a cow.
Oh, there's an even better website for people anywhere. So if you're listening or watching this, you guys, eatwild.com. Literally, you put in your state, and it gives you a whole list of local farmers to you. Now, some people I've sent to that list, Jaci, and they're like, the closest one's 50 miles away. I'm like, that's local enough. Go get it.
Yeah.
Like, go and get it, because it's going to be better for you than God knows what is at Walmart, grocery store, Sam's Club, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you buy it from those places, don't think I'm coming down on you, but if you can, try to support the local farmers, because they're the ones doing what we're talking about here today. Regenerative farming, sustainable food, it's local. All of those things are important. So why don't we start there as we shift the conversation to what we're talking about here? Why is local so important?
Yes, well, for many reasons. I mean, I think the biggest one with this last year, with, you know, a lot of businesses struggling with everything going on, is just supporting your local economy. You know, we have to spend our money. We have to buy food. Now, who are you going to support? Are you going to support some farmers abroad, or even, you know, across the country in California? Or do you want to give it to your neighbors? You know, I think that's the biggest thing that's crossed my mind, is especially when I came back from being vegan to eating meat, was that I wanted to support, you know, good farmers that were doing it right. and ideally that were local. And it seemed kind of daunting at first when you don't know where to get that stuff from. You're just used to going to Walmart or, you know, whichever grocery store, but then you start looking and there are more options out there.
Yes. And you can't even in the stores. I know you mentioned earlier organic caught your attention initially, which is what into this, but even organic means nothing in store. Like I saw in Costco a couple months ago, organic gummy bears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, hey, organic yellow dye, organic blue dye, organic sugar, organic. And I'm like, let's just put some label in front of the crap ingredient.
Yep.
And
yeah, organics become a little tainted.
and then it suddenly takes away that it's crap. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the labeling of things like that. Even keto has gotten that way in the stores. You can't really trust stuff that says keto on it. I'm always like side-eyeing the keto stuff. I'm like, okay, let's see what that, oh crap, no. First thing is whole wheat flour. I'm just like, crazy.
Right, just a bunch of fiber and organic vegetable oil or some kind of one. Oh gosh.
Unbelievable. I'll tell you one of the coolest things I did to make my food local. I started about 9 years ago. I got backyard chickens, and people are intimidated by that, Jaci. They just don't think they can take care of them. Look, once you get the setup and everything kind of ready to go and you kind of get used to it, it's maybe 10 to 15 minutes of my day dealing with, I now have 13 of them. I had as many as 35 at one point, but I'm down to 13 now. And so I love it. I think having chickens is a great kind of starter kit for people looking to go local, along with supporting your local farmers. But man, it's just every time I look at my chickens, I go, I want some ducks now. Now I want some goats. Now I want some. I wish I could have a cow back there. It just gives you that bug. Do you feel the same way? I know you just started kind of your own regenerative farm. Do you feel like a little bit, maybe you want a little more and a little more, kind of cascaded?
Yeah, well, I probably have about 20 chickens, 15 ducks, 17 sheep, couple pigs, you know, some guineas, one turkey. So yeah, as soon as I got some animals and I bought 9 acres, it was game on for me. Whatever extra money I wanted to invest in the land and the animals to take care of it.
Yes, I have a 3/4 corner lot in the city, so it's like I'm not out in the boondocks. If I was out in the boonies and I had 9 acres, oh yeah, I'd be doing all of that, and I'd be rotating, you know, doing all the Joel Salatin kind of style of regenerative farming. Do you look up to him as kind of a mentor in this way?
Yes, for sure. Joel Salatin. Who's the other guy from? Polyface Farms.
Yeah, that's Joel.
That's Joel Salatin. There's someone else. It's slipping my brain right now. But Diana Rogers.
Yeah, Diana Rogers is a good one in Massachusetts. Alan Savory did a really nice job on a TED Talk on YouTube. Did you see that one?
I haven't seen that one yet. Alan Savory, yeah.
He's the one that put on my radar screen that where there is like barren land, like where crops won't even grow or anything, just put cows on them. So as soon as the ruminants get on there, within 3 months, stuff is growing. And within a year, it's like flush with green grass. It's amazing the power of animals to shift the landscape.
Exactly. I mean, I remember in probably 3rd or 4th grade, they talked about diversity. You know, they showed the desert and it didn't have a lot of animals. And then they showed the forest, like the rainforest. And we knew at, in elementary school that more animals was better. So that's what's confused me about the movement now of like, no animals, no animals, no animals. It's like, well, wait, those are good. Like, why would we want less animals?
Yeah, the whole animal rights thing. I mean, I respect people's choices if you don't want to kill animals. But like, it's kind of ironic though, because in order to grow plants, you got to kill an animal to grow plants. Like that, this is kind of the dirty little secret of how this works. I'm just rewatching last night movie Idiocracy, and it just like underscored how just incremental lack of knowledge, ignorance, not in the ugly way, but true, I don't know, ignorance of how things work is ruining us. Like people, oh, well, you need to care for animals, so eat plants. And I'm going, you do know that plant had to come because an animal died to help fertilize it, right?
Mhm.
Know that, right? And they're like, no, they had no idea.
Yeah, there's a really big disconnect between where our food comes from. You know, even growing up myself, I mean, it came from the store. You know, we really didn't go to a farmer's market or anything like that. We didn't really have a garden. We just bought things in a box, heated them up in the microwave or the stove, and that was, you know, the bulk of our food, or you went through a drive-through. But yeah, nobody thinks about the plant, the soybean, you know, that soy protein that, you know, killed all those acres, was sprayed with glyphosate,
Yeah.
killed biodiversity, you know, it's hurting the water. It's
And
huge.
pesticides and herbicides. There's so many things that have to die all at the holy altar of eat plant-based.
Yeah.
Are you tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.
Exactly. Yeah, plant-based is not as good for the environment as I educate anyone that brings that up with me, and I tell from personal experience, you know, I was like, I tried it. I said, hey, this is where it falls short and why it probably won't work long-term for majority of people.
Yeah, I remember talking to Dr. Bill Cole. I used to do a podcast with him called Keto Talk, and on there, he wrote a book called Ketotarian, mostly plant-based keto. And I said, Will, is it possible for someone to eat solely plant-based and get all of the amino acids? Because in animal foods, you get the complete amino acid profile in every animal food. They're all in there, which should tell you something, people. But in plants, you get a little bit in this one, a little bit in that one, a little bit in this one. I said, is it possible? He said, it's technically possible, but you would have to eat such a diversified list of plants, and daily you would have to do it always, those same kind of diversified plants, and he says, and a lot of them to match what you would get from animal food, which to me, if that doesn't like make your head start to spin of, if it's that hard, why am I doing this? Which is why I love his approach is add eggs, add fish if you're going to do the mostly plant-based. That's an okay way to do it if that's what you choose to do. I do the opposite. I do hardly any plants and mostly all animal foods.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm eating any plants that I grow from my garden.
Yes.
Or I find at a local farmer's market if they're selling peaches that grew up the road. Sure, I'll buy some of those.
Oh, I saw some blackberries the other day at the farmer's market. I was so tempted, but I'm like, I'm starting this challenge where it's just animal on Wednesday. I couldn't eat all those blueberries before Wednesday, so I turned it down, but they looked really good.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and I think, you know, like I really love the work of Weston Price. That was someone I did not hear about until after school at all. You know, and that work really opened my eyes to like, whoa, wait a minute, we should be eating local, seasonal, you know, as much as possible. And what did he find? There was no vegan society, there was no vegan culture, you know, there was animal products in a lot of them.
And they glorified the fats. I remember interviewing Sally Fallon Morell, the lady that runs Weston A. Price Foundation. And she said, oh, yeah, well, back in the traditional cultures, they would have an animal kill and they would go right for the fattiest part of the animal first. So they'd hit the brain and they'd hit the, you know, various fatty parts. The lean meats they would feed to the dogs because they knew, even before they knew why, they knew inherently the lean meats make me hungry. Lean meat's not good. So that's my version of a traditional onga bunga. But like, yeah, they would do that. But like they ate, you know, nose to tail. They understood the purpose of the animal was not, oh, just give me my steaks and throw away the rest, which is what we do in modern culture.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we can glean a lot of knowledge from that, and I wish that would have been in my undergrad. I don't know why we didn't, I've reached back out to some of my old professors and been like, "Hey, here's some good books I think we need to, work into this because they need it." And like I said, at least my students, they get exposed to it, but most of them are just jaws on the floor like, "I had never even heard of this." And I felt the same way reading some of these books.
Well, and I can tell you, I don't know what's happened in the dietetics field, but in the medical field at the medical school level, I found out, this has been about 6 or 7 years ago, the Vegan Front Group Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, they actually made this little book that was like an addendum for the medical school students to learn about nutrition, since they weren't getting a whole lot of education. And it was all veganism.
Oh, geez.
I've got a copy of it over in my other building, and I'll flip through it. I'm just like, my God, like they're trying to indoctrinate medical school students, and then it's reinforced by dietitians and by culture saying plant-based, plant-based, plant-based. That, yeah, if you come out of medical school, you come out of dietetic school, and you're not fully indoctrinated, they messed up, because they do a really good job of indoctrination all along the way, which is unfortunate because, as we've been stating here today, animal foods have an abundance of nutrition. In fact, I love that Maria Emmerich and her husband Craig wrote that book, Keto, and in there they have a list of the most nutrient-dense foods in the world. Top 20, guys, all animal foods, mostly beef products.
Exactly. Yes, the animal foods are where it's at, and it's so sad that that's what they've told us to demonize the most. And like I said, I didn't eat red meat for probably years. Even before I was vegan, I would eat it very seldom because I thought, oh, this is what gave grandpa cancer. This is what gave grandma diabetes, when it couldn't have been further from the truth.
Well, especially now that we know diabetes and cancer, obesity. I mean, we could go down the list of all the chronic diseases. Almost every single one of them are metabolic diseases. Like, did you learn any inkling that there was a connection between the foods you eat and those diseases, and the real information, not the red meat and saturated fat, which is probably what you got taught in med school? They're not even getting taught that. Like that's the shocking thing. It's like, tell them a little bit of the connection that food has on all these chronic diseases that now you're covering up with pharmacology.
Yeah, I mean, in undergrad, with a lot of those diseases, it was like, you could eat a little meat, but like it's got to be lean. Lean was probably the biggest word I always saw, was cut the fat off, take the skin off the chicken. That was like their biggest push for those diseases.
Oh, the funniest one was where they came out with that bogus study of eating 1 egg a day is like smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And I'm sitting there with my 7-egg omelet going, I'm sorry, what? Hold my beer. Because it's just ridiculous. And then, of course, you see how they come up with that. They use epidemiological data, scientific data. It just doesn't match up with what real science, which I think randomized controlled trials is probably the only thing we can rely on. And even those can be manipulated even a little bit. So you even have to kind of, question everything. But the vast majority of the research that makes all the splash headlines of red meat causes all-cause mortality, cancer, blah, 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 they're all subjective science based on epidemiology. And I'm going, that doesn't help people.
It helps the businesses that are, pushing them. And yeah, a lot of the research, it's scary how much is so industry influenced. And there's even old studies, I can't remember who specifically found it, but there was like ones where they found out the vegetable oils weren't that great in like the 60s and 70s, but they didn't publish it because it didn't go with the narrative.
And the sugar too. It was during, I think Gary Taubes had a few science-minded students helping him do some research for one of his books, and they discovered in the late 60s that there was some damning information that was in a study that never got published about sugar. But they were trying to vilify fat at the time, and so if something vilified sugar, they knew they were going to be in trouble, and so they squelched it. They paid off, in the equivalent of today's money, $50,000 to the Harvard researchers to not publish it. Then here's where the here's where the story, and then there's the rest of the story, that one of those Harvard researchers ended up on the pre-panel in 1976 to start offering guidance for the dietary guidelines, the very first ones in 1980. He was on that panel pushing low fat, low fat, low fat, sugar's okay, don't demonize it, blah, blah, blah. And he was on there after getting paid off. So like, you almost don't want to believe any science now if people, and that's what we know. How many people were paid off that we don't know about?
Exactly. Yeah, it does make it hard to trust the big consensus. They said cholesterol was bad. They said LDL was bad. Eggs are bad. All these things that aren't really that true based off the science.
Yes. We could go on and on and on about all the problems in the nutrition world, but I do want to hear about your regenerative farm. Tell us, you've told us some of the animals you have on there. What else are you doing? You're growing your own crops, you said. So what are you growing?
Yeah, I have a big garden. I did a lot of squash, watermelon, some peppers, tomatoes. I started a bunch of asparagus. Asparagus takes about 3 years to actually get a return on. So
Same way. I hated growing strawberries. I was just like, I got nothing. They're like, wait 2 more seasons. I'm like, 2 more seasons? I want them now.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, I did some strawberries too. I mean, I even had those, those darn leafy greens, kale and chard. I just threw things out there really just to get the garden going since it was the first full year, just to get some fruits in the ground.
Yeah, I did have a garden for about 4 or 5 years, one up here up front, and it started as a 4-foot plot. And basically it was just herbs. That's really all I did. I wanted to see, could I not kill the unkillable? Because if you ever grow herbs, you guys, and I'm sure you have herbs in your garden, if you ever grow herbs, they don't die. They come back stronger. Like, I haven't grown anything in that garden in a couple of years. I still have mint. I still have so many herbs growing, and I'm just like, basil. I'm like, will you stop growing? I have to like chop it down. I don't want, it's like a weed after a while.
Yeah, once they go to seed, those seeds are there and they can last years in the ground.
Forever. Now, the ones that I wish could last forever, you grow cauliflower and you get one cauliflower and that's it. It don't regenerate. So I was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah, you start to see why some are expensive at the stores.
Squash and zucchini, they come out your ears. The problem with squash and zucchini is they have all those big green leaf things that hide them. And so if you're not sitting there like digging, you'll end up with a friggin' baseball bat. I'm not kidding you guys. I pulled out, I'm sure you've had this run into this as well. You pull out these humongous zucchinis. The squashes don't quite do that because they are the crooked neck. Which ones are you growing?
Oh gosh, I've had a lot of heirloom ones, like Armenians, cucumbers, and just weird squash. I just throw them out there.
Yes, and tomatoes grow well. Yeah, it got so interesting that I actually got a greenhouse I have in my backyard that we would transplant from the front garden once it started getting cooler back to the greenhouse so we could keep it going all year long. Do you guys have anything like that going on?
I don't have a greenhouse yet. That's kind of in the future to get that, and then hopefully a high tunnel as well, because where I'm at in Missouri, Arkansas area, we could grow year round in a high tunnel. Yeah. Certain lettuce and cold tolerant crops for sure.
Tell people what a high tunnel is.
A high tunnel. So it's kind of like a greenhouse, but it doesn't have like usually a machine or anything to make it stay warm. So it's just like a big plastic covered tarp, and the sun keeps it warmer than normal. So, you have a little different microclimate within there, and often you can grow things year round in there.
Yeah, the greenhouse has little windows. So if it's too hot, I can pop open a window and release some of the heat. And yeah. The problem with my greenhouse is the floor, they put plywood down.
Oh, fun.
I'm a big boy. I step right through that plywood. So if I get that going again, put some 2x4s down and make a nice solid floor.
There you go, for sure.
Yes. But So tell us a little more about your farm. What else are you doing on there, and what makes it regenerative and sustainable? Because people hear those terms, JC, but they don't really always know what they mean.
Keto Chow is a customizable shake mix that is also perfect for cooking and baking, giving you simple, nutritionally perfect meal options. Keto Chow. Make keto easy. Discover your favorite flavor at jimmylovesketochow.com.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I'm doing, because I'm not large scale, I'm not selling anything yet, I'm really just getting going still. But for me, the regenerative part is just trying to work with nature, and not trying to fight it. And that's a big thing in permaculture as well, but just trying to work with the land and try to get animals on it and make it more like a natural environment.
Yeah.
And so I use kind of what you talked about earlier, the rotational grazing. So last year and this year, I fenced in the whole 9 acres. And then within that, I made 5 little pastures for my sheep.
Nice.
Yeah. So then, they're constantly being, rotated to different spots. And then I also have 3 rams this year, or well, one's fixed because you fix him. That way he can hang out with his other buddies and keep him company. But I have 1 ram this year that I'll be breeding 14 of my sheep to. So hopefully we'll get some babies in the spring, and that'll be really exciting. And then that'll add to the rotation, and hopefully I'll have some things to sell then and butcher and whatnot. I'm also raising some pigs. They've been kind of my garbage disposal, like for different food waste, or even like those mega zucchini in the garden.
They will eat anything. I remember when I was a kid, my dad had restaurants, and he'd have a slop bucket from the restaurant. And he's like, let's go slop the pigs. And I'm like, we're going to do what? And it just was all the little kitchen garbage, food garbage. And we dump it, and they just, and they just like eat it up. And I'm just like, ugh. I'm like, my stomach's turning because the smell of the slop was just so bad. But yes, all the funky monkey thing. I do that with my chickens, by the way. Whenever I had weird stuff, I would just chop up, the things, and I throw it back there, and just like, and it's wonderful. They love it.
Yeah, the chickens as well. Yeah, they'll eat, if I got watermelon that goes bad or anything, even like a steak bone, they'll pick it clean.
I made a mistake. Once this garden got so full, it started 4x4, or 4 foot, by the way, by 2 foot. It's 24 by 24 now.
That's awesome. Yes.
Big ass garden. But it got so full, we actually had to go to the back part of my property in the backyard. We had to fence it off because the stupid chickens were getting back there and eating. Anytime there was a plant of any kind that we planted, they would eat the seedling before we would get a plant coming. I'm like, if you wait a little while, you'll have lots of watermelon and melons. And no, they wanted the seedling that cost $7.99
Yes, the chickens will do that. I'll warn you, ducks will destroy your garden too if you don't keep them out. They'll just step on everything, and they're hilarious though.
I still want ducks. I've heard about the swimming pool thing, but then they crap all in it, and you have to clean it out. And yeah, I don't have an aquaponics system, although it could probably be pretty easily made back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm fortunate. I have 2 ponds, so they have a paradise there. Yeah, they're happy, and that's even before I had my fence done. That kept them alive from getting eaten from things. Was their ponds.
Yeah, I'm very lucky where I am too. There's no predators. The worst predators are the neighborhood cats, but cats don't mess with birds, unless there was one feral cat that jumped one of my chickens one day, and now that somebody got it. Somebody killed that cat. So.
Yeah, that'll happen. Yeah, there's a lot of cats and raccoons, and usually they'll mess with more of the eggs or their, mess with them.
Speaking of the messing with the eggs, the first time I had chickens 9 years ago, within a week, I had 4 chickens to start. Within a week, I found a black snake, all curled up in the little cubby thing, and he had 3 eggs in his body. He was just sitting there just eating his egg. Of course, I'm terrified of snakes. So I'm like, and then running to the shed to grab the shovel and the bucket. And I got a bucket, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like shoveling this black snake into this bucket. And then I'm like, crap, I left the lid in the in the shed.
Oh no.
Back to the shed, running back over, and he's already slivered halfway out. And I'm like, get back in there, get back in there. And then I was like, now what do I do?
Oh gosh, yeah. You're like, okay, I have it. Now what?
To my across the street neighbor who has a rat problem, or had one at the time, I'll take your snake. I said, oh, thank God, here you go. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I never saw a snake ever again. But that one, that freaked me out.
Yeah, that is scary. Yeah, there are a lot of predators. I think the biggest one I've dealt with is probably more the hawks. They'll sometimes get a chicken. Yeah,
The way my property is positioned, I've got little cubby holes like with my building. I've got like where my hot tub is, it sticks out, so they know instinctively, the chickens run into that cubby hole so that when they dive down to try to get you, they can't come back up because they'd hit a building. So they go crazy. I always know when the chicken hawk is close because they're just like going crazy out there. I'm like, okay, there's another chicken hawk. Run to the cubby hole, people, ladies.
Yes. Yes, all the predators. But once I fenced in my property, that really helped, because before then, there's bobcats, coyotes, the neighbors' dogs even were probably the biggest problem for me. They killed a bunch of my ducks one time. So, yeah, I caught them and told them, I said, hey, you keep your dog off my property, or around here, we shoot.
I'm very lucky I'm in an area where, yeah, I don't have major predators. I have seen people like Mike Mutzel show where his chickens get killed by raccoons and other wildlife. Thankfully, I'm in South Carolina, where there's not a whole lot of that, at least where I am. I'm sure out in the boonies it is lots of wildlife that could kill, but not here. Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Missouri. Close to Arkansas. Mm-hmm.
You said correctly. I said Missouri.
Missouri. Yep.
Missouri. Nobody says Missouri. They do, but I guess that's too related to the college there, University of
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So quite a, get a good variety of weather, get a good snow in the winter, and nice and hot right now.
Cool. Is that considered the Midwest?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So encourage people that want to be more closer to their food, to eat local, to be more regenerative with the farming, to have more sustainable sources of food. Where do they bare knuckles start if they're not doing anything right now? They're still buying all their food in the grocery store. How do they get going, Jaci?
I think the first would be either using that Eat Wild website you recommended, or like Facebook Market or Craigslist, and just finding someone there's someone out there selling at their house, or like they're selling meat that they raised and they did that, like finding some kind of like a part of a cow or something, even if it is a little further away. If you can, split it. My family, we bought a half a cow together, and split it that way. That way it wasn't so much, but we got a lot of meat.
Get a deep freezer.
Yeah, I had to get a deep freezer.
Yeah, because deep freezers, they're not that expensive. I got one on my front porch I've had for about 6 years. It's starting to get rusty, so it's time for a new one. But it was like $70. It wasn't that expensive.
Yeah, last year.
Oh, I lost. You said
Spam call.
Last year, what?
Last year, there was kind of a shortage of the deep freezes at one point.
Yeah.
But now we're fine.
Yes, I was in Sam's Club the other day, and I saw they had them back. And yeah, if you catch them on sale, you can get them at a really good price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then in addition to trying to find like a local farmer's market, or some kind of local farmer, I also encourage people to try to do like their own little garden, even if it is just like a couple buckets. Starting a tomato plant and growing that in a bucket with some holes in it. Just starting.
The bucket idea is so underrated. At the height of when I had my garden, on top of the garden, I had about 50 buckets of things in there. And it's just, guys, it's just a normal kind of big, what are they, 50-gallon buckets? Is that what they are? The big
5-gallon, just a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, just something to put some of the soil in, and put the seed in, or a seedling in, and then grow. And then look up as well, go to your local Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever. They have guidance as to when you can plant, when it's good to get certain things, and the kind of like they got all kind of information that can help you with that. But yeah, talk about like knowing where your food comes from. Right there and right back there are so close, so you can't get more local than that.
Exactly. Local is great, but homegrown is also, amazing. And I feel like you just feel so much more excited and rewarded whenever you go outside and you grab your own tomato and eat it.
Yeah.
I promise you, it will taste so much better.
Or you see that one of your girls, the chickens, or in your case, the ducks, just laid an egg. It's still very warm. And then you come and cook it in a skillet. And it's just like, wow, that literally just became food. And now I'm eating that food. It's pretty special.
It is. And yeah, and just know, like with plants and things, you're going to kill some plants, and that's okay. They're not all going to live. I always like, no, they got to survive. No, they're going to die.
You're going to kill a lot of them. Look, I even kill chickens. Like sometimes chickens just randomly die for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
They just over and people are, what did you do? I'm like, no, chickens just die sometimes.
They do. Yeah.
It's just a part of it's the circle of life, as they say.
Yeah, it's sadly like with people. Sometimes we get sick suddenly and pass away. It's sad, but everybody's kind of got their time limit. So we just have to enjoy that while we can.
Absolutely. Well, guys, again, that is Jaci Woods. Go check her out over on Instagram, carnivore_RD. And she's got lots of great information on there. Do you have a website, or are you doing anything beyond kind of your little Instagram world?
Not yet. I'm hoping to expand into starting like my own private practice as I'm gaining more experience with outpatient currently at my job. So yes.
Let me give you an idea for how you can expand. They have wonderful things like Instagram Live, what we're doing here today, and stories and things. Start doing videos on your farm and even doing some commentary behind the scenes where you're kind of talking about it while you're showing what you're doing, and then post those videos on YouTube as well. I think you would be very shocked how much interest there would be in this, which is why I was really happy to have you here today on my show.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I'll be in touch as things keep expanding.
Get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com. Woo!
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.